Hello, 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 my friends. My name is Evelyn Joy, and welcome back to my channel. So it's that time of year that Dollar Tree has awesome things for the garden. Now, a lot of the things are made cheaply, but I am one that I'm of the opinion that I refuse. I will not pay $10 for a tomato cage. So last year I did not use tomato cages, but I did grow tomatoes. So what did I use to trellis them? I trellised them with bamboo poles, 6-foot bamboo poles. I trellised them with baby gates that I turned into trellises. And this year, on top of the baby gates, because they weren't tall enough, on top of the baby gates, I bought an additional trellis and connected it to the top using bamboo poles. Um, but I also at Home Depot, I found tomato cages for only $3. See, I won't pay $10 for a tomato cage, but for $3 for a quality one, I got a few of them so that I can compare notes. Because it's my second year gardening, I'm still figuring everything out. Now, I was so excited yesterday when I was at Dollar Tree checking out the gardening section. Now they have some things that are like not worth the money, they're just not well quality, not made well, but they have some gems. Dollar Tree, it's almost like thrift store shopping in that you have to search for the treasures because some things are not worth the money, even $1. And some things are like, oh my goodness, this is only $1. So I found tomato trellises for $1. So I wanted to show them to you. So they come like this. I bought 6 of them. Okay. $6 for 6 trellises. That's my kind of price. I will not pay $10 for one trellis, but I will pay $6 for one. $6 for 6 of them. Okay, so here's my thought. Okay, so this is how it comes. It has these connected right here. Here, here, and here. So it's connected on there, but it kind of, it's kind of wiggly, kind of moves around. So I think they call it a tomato trellis. Okay, that's what they call it on the packaging. I think since it's a smaller one, this would be perfect for pepper plants, don't you think? Um, why? Because, okay, last year I did not put a tomato cage or trellis or even I didn't even stake my pepper plants. Now, your pepper plants, they probably need to be staked. So one of them fell over because of the wind and it broke and it died, right? So I was thinking, since this is smaller, this would be the perfect support for it. Now, it's sort of flimsy, right? It might move with the wind a little bit. So what I was thinking too is maybe growing inside of a grow bag or growing inside of a bucket. This would be perfect because it's down in there. So what I'm going to do this year is I'm going to try using, the regular trellis that I built. I say regular, but I made it out of baby gates. And I put a regular trellis on top of it. And then I'm also going to try the $3 tomato cages from Home Depot. Then I'm also going to try these $1 ones. And so we're going to compare notes. We're going to see how the plants do. So these are good for a small tomato plant. So maybe if you have a determinate variety. As you know, the indeterminate varieties, they can grow really tall. So this one maybe would be good for a smaller one. I don't know. I'm thinking last year that my tomato plants, I grew cherry tomato plants in buckets. This would have worked fine for those because when you're growing tomato plants in buckets, their root system is inhibited, so they don't grow quite as big. So I think this would have worked in the bucket. Now, see, it's kind of a little bit flimsy. So I'll show you starting from, see, it goes flat. That's pretty cool. I like it though, because it's like good for storage, for packing up for the winter or whatever. You can easily fold it up. That's kind of cool because other tomato cages, you can only stack them and they're massive. You can't, flatten them out. $1, guys. Dollar Tree is my price. My favorite price is free, but $1 for tomato trellises, as they call it. So if you're wondering the size, These are, one of them is, the biggest ring is 8.6 inches in diameter. The medium one is 7.9 inches in diameter, and the smallest one is 7.1 inches in diameter. So it has stakes that go into the ground. This is my first time seeing this at Dollar Tree. Now, I'm a second-year gardener. I don't know if this is a new invention or not, but it was my first time seeing it or noticing it, and it's standing out to me as like, oh my goodness, I can't believe they have that. That's so cool, right? So you pull these out around like this, and you place them how you want them, right? And you'll want to have them like a triangle, right? So all the way around, supporting each part. So yeah, something like that. So I think once it's in the ground, especially if you bury it pretty deep in the ground, and again, this adjusts to different parts. So anyway, it goes up and down. You can adjust it. So I'm really curious to know, once it's in the ground, how stable it will be with the wind. I feel like once it's in the ground or in the bucket, I feel like these are perfect for buckets because the size around is like the perfect size. I feel like these are really good for pepper plants instead of tomato plants. So anyway, I think, and I'm toying with the idea of buying more buckets, or I want to compare growing in buckets and growing um in grow bags. So I'm going to order some grow bags from walmart.com, and I'm going to compare growing in the ground, growing in grow bags, growing in buckets, cuz I feel like growing in bags and buckets, it's useful information to know for people who live in an apartment or have limited space. And also, you can have them closer together than uh, in a raised bed. You have to space them out a bit more because they each have their own root system. You don't want them, hurting each other. But when they're in a bucket, they each have their own bucket, so it kind of takes up less space, and that's space that you can use other places. Okay, let's talk a little bit about companion planting. So I've been so interested about companion planting, especially with tomatoes. What is companion planting? There are companions to some plants. Some plants, they don't play well with others. Um, for example, viney plants. They just vine all over. They take over like all of the melon plants. Each of my melons is going to have their own bed and their own trellis because they don't play well with others. And zucchini and squash are the same way. They just take over. So they don't play well with others. So they don't really have necessarily, although zucchini can be a good companion plant as far as covering the ground. So anyway, I want to talk about good companion planting for tomatoes. So for example, what I'm thinking of doing is, first of all, I'm growing marigolds nearby. What do the marigolds do? Marigolds attract the bumblebees that are pollinators that help all your fruits and vegetables be pollinated and come to fruition, right? The fruit of the plants. And then also marigolds, I hear they detract some of the hornworms and the um, predatory moth that the hornworm turns into, and also the mosquitoes. So apparently mosquitoes don't like marigolds. I don't know how true that is, but I'm going to find out this summer. We tend to, at some point during the summer when it's really rainy and stuff, we tend to get a lot of mosquitoes, and that tends to be an issue because I don't like taking my kids outside just for them to get bitten at. So I like the idea of companion planting. So I'm not a big flower person. In fact, like I'm allergic to flowers, so flower pollen and grass pollen, so I don't really like flowers that much. But that said, I grew marigolds last year, really, really loved growing them, enjoyed growing them. They're beautiful yellow flowers, and they're really helpful in the garden, so I feel like it's worth it to grow them, right? Worth a couple sneezes or taking some medicine for my allergies, right? But, so let's talk about some other companions for tomatoes. For example, carrots. I'm going to be growing carrots on the ground around my tomato bed because think about it. Let's say I have a bed, right? And I have tomato plant, tomato plant, tomato plant. On the ground is growing either weeds or I've maybe put a lot of mulch there, right? So what's mulch? So that can be wood chips or hay or whatever you put, right? Some people put cardboard, right? Whatever you put. So rather than mulch, what if I grew carrots? Hear me out. So the carrots provide some of that ground coverage and they're adding extra nutrients to the soil that actually helps the tomatoes, right? So the nutrients that the carrots are putting in the soil, that's adding to the nutrients of the tomatoes. Also, insects that are predatory to tomatoes get confused by all the different smells. So marigold's an example of that. The next plant I want to talk about companion planting with tomatoes is basil. Apparently, there's myths that growing basil near tomatoes would make the tomatoes taste better, and that's actually debunked. But if you cook tomatoes with basil, you can make a delicious pasta sauce, right? So growing tomatoes by basil and by other plants, it helps to confuse the predatory insects such as the hornworms and the moths that the hornworms turn into. It helps to confuse them um, because it's like this. They come to your raised bed. Let's imagine my raised bed again. It's got the tomato plants and the mulch in between. All it is tomato plants and mulch, right? So the predatory bug comes to one tomato plant, eats it all up, quickly hops onto the next tomato plant, eats it all up, and on until all my tomatoes are goners, right? Well, now imagine with me that those predatory bugs find a tomato plant. But I have basil and um, I have carrots growing in with them. The bugs get confused because they can't find the next tomato plant because of the smells, right? They're smelling basil, they're smelling marigolds, they're smelling carrots, and they can't find it. Also, the carrots provide a ground coverage, the greenery of them do, that you would get from mulching, right? So the ground coverage, what does it do? Covering the ground, it helps prevent weeds, right? I'm already growing carrots there, so there's less weeds that come in. Also, ground coverage, it helps keep the rain in. So let's say it rains real heavy one day, but the next day the sun is like 100 degrees. It dries everything out and the dirt is dry. You may or may not know that plants, they're fed by sunlight and soil. So actually they need moist soil. A common misconception is that they need water, right? But really they need moist soil. They don't like too much water. They want moist soil. So the key is keeping that soil moist. And when you're watering them, you don't have to water the leaves. The roots are what drink the water out of the soil, right? And the leaves are for getting the sunlight, right? So plants do need water, but not an overabundance of it. But they like moist soil, right? With the exception of like bean plants that like more dry weather. So some plants want more water, some plants a little bit less. And it is good it is good for plants to get a little bit thirsty in between, right? It helps them develop their root system. If a plant is not thirsty, it's not going to be digging its roots down deep. It already has the water it needs. It doesn't need to dig its roots any deeper. But if it's thirsty, it digs its roots deeper, looking for that water, searching for it. And that helps it develop a stronger root system, and it makes a stronger plant altogether. So yeah, it's interesting. It's also interesting how um, direct sun and wind create a stronger plant. So, for example, my seedlings that I'm starting inside, they're kind of weak. So, I bring them outside on days that are not strong winds, on days that are not strong sun, on days that are not too bad. It's just like, overcast or partly cloudy, 60-degree, 70-degree weather, so that they can get acclimated to being outside, because plants that you start from seed outside are much stronger than plants that you start from seed inside. So interesting stuff. So I'm a second year gardener, and I am loving learning all this stuff. So I just want to share the information as I talk to you about it. Now, some of my strawberry plants, I am starting to grow them in laundry baskets. And so that's one experiment. I am also growing strawberry plants from the bare root. So that's another experiment. I also have strawberry plants that are popping up from last year. So that's another thing I'm experiencing. I don't know whether or not I'll have actual strawberries this year, because berry plants can take up to 3 years to fully establish themselves. But then once they're fully established, they start bearing that fruit, right? This year, I'm interested in attempting blueberry plants again. Now, blueberry plants, they need acidic soil. Actually, all berry plants like acidic soil. So yeah, I need to buy special soil for them. I'm thinking of possibly container gardening for them, or possibly putting them in the ground. I'm still debating back and forth. But with blueberry plants, it's important to space them out more, because they can grow very big, right? And also have a couple different varieties of blueberry plants, different kinds, so that they can cross pollinate and create better fruit, bigger blueberries. So that's really interesting. Watermelon, I've heard it's not good to plant them right by other melons, but I am planning on one raised bed's going to be watermelon, the one next to it's going to be cantaloupe. I am planning on doing that. So I'm going to try hand pollinating. That's where you take the male flower and you just rub it against the female flower, and hopefully that hand pollinates it so that we don't have cross pollination issues, right? So all these things and more, looking forward to learning. I've built smaller trellises to the close to the ground for my melons, so that I can stack up cinder blocks underneath the melons as they grow. But also, I'm going to try, tying pantyhose, or tying a plastic bag to see how the hanging fruit does as opposed to the fruit that's on the cinder blocks. So lots of interesting experiments in the garden. I have very shallow soil in my kiddie pool raised bed. So I am going to try growing cabbage and a few other plants that are shallow rooted, right? So I'm trying containers, I'm trying trellises, I'm trying in the ground, I'm just trying a little bit of everything. So that I'm just seeing what's the best way to grow each plant, and how can I make the most of the space that I have, right? I've got potatoes growing in the ground that I'm still waiting for them to surface, and I'm starting to become a doubting Thomas. I don't know if they'll surface. It's been like 3 weeks. They can take 2 to 4 weeks to reach the surface, but we've had the occasional cold weather, so I don't know if what'll happen. So, but I have some new seed potatoes that are growing, that are in buckets. I just recently planted them, so I really am confident that they will come to fruition. But obviously, I just planted them, so looking forward to trying that. I've always wanted to, well, ever since last year, I've wanted to try growing potatoes in buckets. Last year, I grew potatoes in the ground. So I'm interested in comparing notes with those two. And maybe I'll try in a grow bag as well, so I can compare, you know, potato plant in a bucket to a potato plant in a grow bag, a potato plant in the ground, compare notes, right? My husband told me that he's not really a fruit and vegetable eater. My kids and I are. I have 4 kids. But my husband told me he enjoyed the potatoes. So I'm gonna run with that and grow more potatoes than last year, and should be interesting. So I'm planning on growing. My blackberry plants are doing really well. I don't know if I'll have blackberries this year or not, but they're doing really well. Um, and so this is the second year with blackberry plants, and um, strawberries are doing okay. I'm still waiting for my bare roots to start to show leaves, and I'm doubtful about it. It's so funny. I always like doubt, and then when it shows up, I'm like, wow, I'm so pleasantly surprised, right? It's because with plants, you never know. Plants can be so fickle, or they can die easily, or they can like flourish into this huge thing, and it's so surprising and amazing. So you never know with plants. You just have to try your best and give them what they need, meet their needs, and try to support them and do your best. But yeah, so I built a huge arch trellis that has 4 raised beds in it. In those raised beds, I'm planning on growing um, black beans, pinto beans, green beans, and uh, peas all on the trellis. But then in the raised bed, there's still more space for some carrots and some marigolds. So I'm learning about companion planting and vertical gardening, and the kind of soil that berry plants need, and and different kinds of trellises for tomato plants, and container gardening versus growing in the ground. And I'm going to do a little bit of everything, and I'm going to take notes and share it all on my YouTube channel. So make sure you feel free and like and subscribe, hit the notification bell, and watch my garden grow. Oh my goodness, you guys. Next month I turn 33. April 22nd. And around my birthday is about our estimated last frost date. So that's like a gift in and of itself. So also, oh yeah, I'm going to be using a little bit of natural fertilizer for um, my cauliflower and broccoli and cabbage. Um, so my friend Dani told me what to get, so I need to look that up and get some of that for them so that hopefully they can grow. They're cold weather plants. So I don't know whether there's enough time for them to grow to their full potential, but this is the experimental garden. We're finding out, we're making the most of each month. This month I can't plant warm weather things outside, but I can start the seeds inside and try to acclimate them to outside, and I can do the things that'll survive for right now. So anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. Check out Dollar Tree. Oh, also on the Dollar Tree website, I've been wanting the stackable pots, right? That people grow strawberries and other things in. The stackable pots are just $1 for each container, right? At Dollar Tree. People keep saying they're at Dollar Tree. They're not when I go. But on the Dollar Tree website, you can buy a set of 36 for $36. And if you pay a little bit more, I paid a total of $50, including shipping. If you pay a little bit more for shipping, you can have it shipped to your house, or you can pick up at the store. So I chose to have it shipped to my house because I don't want to miss an email and not pick them up. So I just paid a little bit more. So I paid $50 for 36 of these stackable pots. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with you guys as well as I learn how to do that. I'm thinking I might add wheels at the bottom. I got some wheels at Dollar General, and I may put I think there's a hole down the middle, or I might drill a hole down the middle and put a what do you call it? A bamboo pole through the middle so that it holds together because we get really strong winds here sometimes. So anyway, I'm figuring out lots of vertical gardening and lots of stuff, all the stuff. So I'm learning how to garden. So welcome to my journey and just learning how to grow food for my family in the space that God has given me in my yard. So yeah, good times. All right. Talk to you guys later. Bye.